Hey, what's up, everybody? It's DisThunder, and we're going to take a look today at the Mezco 112 Collective Mighty Morphin Power Rangers box set. It's a bit of a mouthful, and it's definitely a box full. So, I don't know that I feel obligated to do a lot of background on Power Rangers because it's Power Rangers. And I also covered quite a bit of this when I was talking about the Green Ranger, which was that was last year, I think. Time is becoming meaningless really quickly, which in itself is sort of a paradox. But I probably mentioned it in that review. I only somewhat unironically enjoyed Power Rangers during junior high. A lot of us watched it, a lot of us made fun of it, but a lot of us watched it anyway. And in like most shows from your childhood, your adolescence, it has more charm as I watch it later. Actually, that's not really fair to say. Not all shows age well, but some shows, like for example Turtles and Transformers and G.I. Joe and Power Rangers, they do have some earnestness to them that are lacking in modern day stuff, and it definitely helps. And it's because of that earnestness and that sort of straight-faced, stereotypical Americanization of a Japanese property that it has a certain charm to it. And it became, obviously, a giant multimedia juggernaut and created movies and video games and tons of toys. So it's safe to say it was successful. As successful here as it was in Japan is up for debate, but it did well here, especially in the 90s. I think one thing we all kind of universally agree on when it comes to Super Sentai or Power Rangers is the look is good. The look has always been that nice mix of superhero and not quite militaristic, but maybe kind of a sci-fi police vibe, if that tracks. And the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers did this in an exemplary fashion, and that's probably why these figures, it certainly helped make these figures look as stunning as they do. From the very beginning of the solicitation for these guys, the pictures that we saw, they looked like TV stills. They looked like shots from the TV show. They were fantastic, and in person, that stayed very much the same. That is not to downplay Mezco's outstanding work in the fabric and the use of matte plastics in the right places and gloss plastics in the other right places. But these designs translate over really well to this style. And these, maybe even more so than most 112 cloth goods figures, look like actual people in suits when you're looking at them. Now, we kind of knew it was going to be that way when we got the Green Ranger, but having 6 of them that look this good, well, that's even a little better than I was expecting. Not everybody's going to agree with me on this, but I actually think the head sculpts did an excellent job of keeping that going as well. I tried to get some nice natural light pictures here, starting with Jason, and now we're on to Kimberly, where you could see them in natural light to try to get that better across. And here's Zach. I think it works better in person. I know that sounds like a cop-out, and everybody gives me shit when I say that, oh, yeah, that's what everybody says. But they do look better in person. Like looking at Trini's kind of focused stare there, she looks heroic, which is cool, seeing as she's no longer with us. I think my favorite, though, has to be David's. Or, excuse me, Billy. David is the actor that plays Billy. I guess both apply here. But, yeah, Billy's head sculpt's my favorite of them. As you might expect, there's a little bit of carryover from accessories from the release of the Green Ranger, which includes these holsters and blade blasters. Like Tommy's, they have the knife that inserts into the front, or you leave that out and you can use one of several blast effects that come with the figures. In addition to the ones that Tommy got, these also include an assortment of different colored blasts to match, the color-coded ones in the show. And like with Tommy's, these fold up nicely and store on, I think they're supposed to go on the left side. I put them all on the right side of the figures because that's where I usually put holsters, but I think they're actually left side holsters, or they're intended to be. In addition to the blade blasters, you have some individual weapons, like for example 3 of these Thunder Slinger blasters. If I remember right, I associate these mostly with Jason and Tommy because they had to work together to go get them from somewhere in the desert. Does that sound right? I'm not going to wiki it. I'm just going to roll with it. You also get 2 sets of the Dragon Shield armor. Obviously gave one to Jason because he used it, and I actually mistakenly remembered it being Billy that used it, but I think it was actually Zach in the show. So we'll just chalk that up to rose-colored glasses messing with the blue-black balance. Anyway, I've got Jason with the Power Blaster, which is all of the weapons combined, and use that to vanquish the bad guy till he gets really big and you have to call the Megazord. And here's a shot of Billy with that anti-sonic foam gun with the blast effect in it, which actually has a metal rod that you insert into the barrel, which is slightly different, but probably just a stronger support for being a slightly heavier effect. At least that's what I'm going with. Jason comes with 2 power swords, 1 regular and 1 charged. The charged one obviously being done in translucent red to reflect the energy effect from the show. Likewise, Billy comes with 2 versions of his power lance. Well, in this case, there's actually 3 because you have 2 separate power lances, and then you have one combined one with a middle piece to connect them into the spear with the lance tips on each end. At first, I thought that was kind of redundant until I realized that the spear tips were actually shorter in the individual versions, which, makes them more handheld and more compact, so it does make sense. That just shows attention to detail here again. Beyond that, as you'd expect, everybody comes with their individualized weapons. You have the Pink Ranger's power bow with 3 arrows, the Yellow Ranger's power daggers, and the Black Ranger's power axe. Their inclusion shouldn't surprise anybody, but, for the sake of covering accessories, I wanted to at least mention them in some sort of passing. And having all 6 of these guys together with their signature weapons is quite an impressive sight. Heading over to articulation, when it comes to the guys, this is the same setup that we got with the Green Ranger. So if there's anything I don't say explicitly here, it's in that review. But what you need to know is, like the Green Ranger, you do not get butterfly joints, but everything else is here and has a pretty significant range of motion. The spandex of the costumes allows for a pretty good range on pretty much everything I tried to stretch out. I think the shoulders top out kind of low comparatively, but you could rotate them to get around that if you really needed to get that pose. I found the torso joints, once again, to be pretty good here. Not a bad range back, pretty good range forward. And of course, with there not being any real constriction here, the hip joints and all the leg joints move excellently. It's also worth noting that I like the kind of squishy texture of the hands, makes it easier to grip accessories. And I also found the ankles to be, again, a step in the right direction. It seems like Mezco's kind of ironed out whatever ankle issues they had in the past where they were kind of gummy or not having a great range. These guys have none of those problems. The female figures, though, now this is where things get interesting. Like with Spider-Gwen, basically from the shoulders in down to the top of the knees, is, I presume, a metal armature covered in like a silicone rubber body. The shoulders and double joints work just like any other Mezco, and they obviously work fantastic here. But the real fun is when you get into the body posability, where you can flex the, I should also mention the double jointed neck as well. That's still plastic going into the collar. But yeah, once you get into the actual body articulation, things get a little ridiculous and maybe a little unfair, if I'm being honest. The range on this new female body style they're doing is just phenomenal. She can high kick up to her face. Obviously, there's a great range out. And because the double jointed knees and the shins are still plastic, you get the same range of motion and stability that you would expect with any other Mezco figure. But I mean, these are just incredible. Same style as Spider-Gwen, but I would say this is a new body, especially the torso. I think the torso is a little bit bigger to reflect, slightly more adult females than Gwen. But dude, I can't get enough of this. I hope we see a Catwoman at some point. Getting back to that for comparison, here they are with Spider-Gwen. As you can see, she's not terribly smaller, but I feel like the maybe more realistic proportions on the Yellow and the Pink Ranger compared to the more comic proportions of Gwen, if that makes sense. They're relatively close in height. The Rangers are just a teeny bit taller. But suffice to say, if you enjoyed Gwen, you're going to love these Rangers. This articulation scheme is just awesome. And I don't feel like it's much of a sacrifice. It's not like 89 Batman where you had to give up some functionality. These function great. I don't know if it's something I need to see on the male figures, but if it makes sense, I'm not going to object to it either. Getting back to the male figures, here's all 3 of the boys in their dragon or shield armor, and all 4 of the guys use the same base body, which makes sense. You know what's funny, though? Looking at, I realize I've got the Green Ranger step forward, but he actually looks thicker in this picture, doesn't he? I don't think he actually is. I think that's just kind of a trick of my positioning and the colors. And here is the Red Ranger with the defending champion of my collection, my favorite figure of all time, Supreme Knight Batman, where he actually stacks up better than I was anticipating. They are probably, I think they're about 6.5 inches the top of their head. Helmets, I should say, which makes sense. The helmets make them feel a little bit taller because they presumably have a head in there. But obviously Supreme Knight's still bulkier, and so I think the scale works fine. And here is the Black and Yellow Ranger with a couple of the Hasbro Lightning Collection monsters, Goldar, and I can't remember the Egyptian guy's name right now. Scale-wise, I don't think this is bad for when they're in their regular forms. I think the Super 7 Goldar would probably be a better fit. I think he should look a little more intimidating than he does here. I will say, though, as time has gone on, these Lightning Collection figures have just not held up. They are just floppy messes to try to pose with something else. Here is my only other Hasbro Power Ranger figure that I could find, and I actually have 3 of these, and now I've only got 2 because one fell like a foot off of the shelf and shattered into pieces. So there you go. That's as much Lightning Collection comparison as you're going to get out of me. I do have a couple of these motorcycles, though, and I don't remember which RPD figure they came with, but I think as far as using them with Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, as anachronistic as that may be, I think that's a pretty good scale fit, too. So I guess the takeaway there is if you have any Lightning Collection accessories you want to use with your Mezco Power Rangers, I don't think it'll be a problem. I think they will scale just fine and look pretty good doing it. So overall, I think I already pretty much covered what's the big draw, the big takeaway from this set, which is, like the Turtles, number 1, you get everybody in one shot, so you have all 5 of the core Rangers, and you're done, which is always welcome. Does make it a little hard to digest, and does make it a little harder to make a concise review out of it, because in all honesty, I could probably take 10-minute chunks for each Ranger if I wanted to. That just doesn't really seem necessary in this case, where 3 of the 5 we've essentially seen already in the Green Ranger and the White Ranger. The girls, though, obviously are amazing. They're all amazing. Let's not beat around this. These are excellent figures, and their presence and their overall finish and appearance is just stellar. They are probably the last word in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers figures, especially considering the changes in licenses and I think we're going to Playmates now. I don't anticipate me buying a lot of Power Rangers figures going forward. Not that I bought a lot before anyway, but now there's even less reason to be concerned about such a thing. This delivered for me in a way that I don't know the Lightning Collection ever quite hit the right spot for me, but these do. And that's probably because I'm a giant Mezco fanboy. But if you are a Power Rangers collector and that is your bread and butter, these are absolutely must-owns for you. And as such, thank you to Mezco Toys for helping me get this set to review for you guys. Hopefully you can acquire some of your own, do the waitlist thing. Try not to overdo it on the secondary market, but if you decided this was a must-have and you need to get it, and I think if I were a Power Rangers hardcore collector, I could justify a pretty ridiculous sum to get these guys into my set. So you do what you got to do, and I certainly won't judge. With all that being said, thank you for coming through and watching the review. There will be more stuff soon. There's just so much stuff that's shipped in such a short period of time, and day job gets in the way, and excuses, blah blah blah. But I'm looking forward to reviewing some more figures for you here soon. So please check back and take care till then.